On from the video I did on the English translations of Nietzsche, where I came out strongly in favour of the Oscar Levy edition of translations done between 1909 and 1913. I'd like to look at some compilations of Nietzsche, those anthologies of sections of his work all put together in one volume, which can, when done properly, give a good summation of Nietzsche's thought in one handy volume and make a nice counterpart to the full, complete works. The first one I want to look at is by Thomas Common, the translator of Thus Spake Zarathustra in Oscar Levy's edition. In early 1900s, and this edition I have is 1901, he put together an anthology of translations that were preliminary. In it, he has his Zarathustra, but he hasn't quite finessed it in that he's using the term overman, whereas he will use Superman in the Oscar Levy edition. So in this anthology, he is using overman, not Till's Beyond a Man, nor his own Superman. And so this is a brief blip, if you like, where overman is used. He will use Superman in his full translation of Zarathustra, influenced by George Bernard Shaw's use of Superman in his Nietzschean play Man and Superman. But this anthology of Thomas Common's is very influential and quite an important work. For many of the early Nietzscheans, and tough Nietzscheans they were, got their first Nietzsche through this anthology. So before the complete works was fully translated and published, years later, in 1901, Nietzscheans were able to get, in English, some good snippets of strong, tough Nietzsche. So this is the book. It's Nietzsche as critic, philosopher, poet, and prophet. The prophet, as you can imagine, is lots of Zarathustra, and poet as well, I suppose. And critic, of course, there was a fascination with what Nietzsche had to say about other thinkers and writers of the time. Probably more so then than now, because a lot of the writers that Nietzsche seized upon were much more current then. But this is an excellent anthology to have. It's the first real anthology of Nietzsche, and I think there are some modern editions of it, or at least you can get hold of some modern reprints of it. So here we have it, Thomas Common. As we've spoke about before, after World War II, there was a push, or was it a putsch, to rehabilitate Nietzsche, or rather to mediocritize Nietzsche, in my view. And this was in English, carried out mainly by Kaufman in the 50s and 60s, 70s, and Hollingdown in the 60s, 70s, 80s onwards. They produced compilations of their own, but I think they're misleading, and I try to avoid them. But even in the 60s, when that rehabilitation was going on, an anthology appeared under the auspices of Geoffrey Clive. And it really is an excellent little anthology which really puts Kaufman and Hollingdown to shame. Called simply The Philosophy of Nietzsche, and has the rather lurid 60s Superman, Richard Hamilton type cut up as a cover. But the anthology itself is excellent. And you see my own copy is heavily self-annotated because it really does go through the gamut of Nietzsche in a very logical and really, really useful way. I think if you read this through, and you could do it in a couple of days, if you read this through, you will get a really good understanding in the round of what Nietzsche is about. It's got autobiographical stuff, it's got stuff on a chapter called Aristocratic Radicalism after the Georg Brandes essay. So it shows that it's very well up on what I call tough Nietzschean principles. And it's intelligent. It has a section which is the prefaces. And Nietzsche himself said in a letter somewhere that if you read those prefaces, and particularly the new prefaces that he did in 1886 to most of his books up till then, he said if you read those prefaces in conjunction, you'll get a very good idea of his thinking. And this is what this anthology does. It puts those together, and lots of things like that. Puts these things together in a really intelligent and useful way. So I would say actually the Thomas Common compilation is important historically. And yes, important as a snapshot of what Nietzschean in English tough Nietzscheanism was then. But this anthology is a real total rounded affair, and it's all Levy edition translations. So this is a perfect supplement to your collected works of Nietzsche, but in the Oscar Levy edition. This should sit next to them as your anthology. If you're going on holiday or something, this is the one to take with you. It's excellent. In the 90s, when the rehabilitation had really taken hold and the existentialist Nietzsche really was the only Nietzsche in town, this little gem appeared in the Duckworth series of the sayings of the various writers and thinkers were given this treatment, where short aphorisms were listed. And Nietzsche's work obviously works in this format very well because he tended to write aphoristically anyway. And this one, edited by Stoddart Martin, uses again the Levy anthology. So all these quotations here under various headings, the useful section here under politics. You see, I heavily annotated it myself, put in my own favourite quotes alongside them. A really useful book if you want to find that Nietzsche quote or put one in. It's just a totally useful little book and really gets you thinking in a Nietzschean way, paring everything down into one short statement if you can. Get the essence of it. Really is quite an excellent little book. And yes, excellent. It's all Levy. So these three I would heartily recommend as the core compilations. This historic one, giving you the flavour of tough Nietzscheanism. The all-round one, which is virtually gives you Nietzsche in one compact, and then the aphoristic one, giving you the sayings. Really, the complete works plus that, and you've got your Nietzsche. Maybe there's a couple of other mentions that we can have. In the 1990s again, the mid-90s, so this is 95, under the German Library series came out this philosophical writings. So here the emphasis is on the hard philosophy, this anthology. So unlike the Geoffrey Clive one, which covers the whole gamut of Nietzsche's thought and life. This one is very much emphasizing hard philosophy, and the translations are mainly from the Levy. There's a few which aren't, but mainly from the Levy. So again, it's a good. And last but not least, we go to the extreme, we go to the hard edge, and we find this, the hammer of the gods. This is Nietzsche in all his eccentric, ecstatic, extreme, dynamite glory. Stephen Metcalf made the translations of all the pieces, so it's not Levy, but it's a fresh take on Nietzsche's ideas with three sections alone on the will to power. Will to power, which is largely ignored or played down by the post-war liberal rehabilitators of Nietzsche. In here, Stephen Metcalf gives you will to power, will to power, will to power. He gives you the mad God. He gives you the ecstasy. He gives you the whole madness. So that's a great little anthology if you want to go to the extremes of tough Nietzscheanism in the modern world. So I think those five books, those five are a nice brace of compilations of Nietzsche's work, with the emphasis on the Levy, and therefore keeping us right on the right track of Oscar Levy. Praise his name.